Hello, it's Lynn Watts here. And today I'm going to talk about what I think is often quite a challenging situation for us as school counselors, and that is helping a student when they're having an angry outburst. And there's a lot of reasons why this can be very challenging. The first thing that I think I can certainly relate to, maybe you can as well, and maybe not. But if being around somebody who is angry is somewhat of a difficult situation for you anyway. In other words, if you're the kind of person who tends to avoid conflict or avoid anger or has a difficult time expressing anger or tends to back off and move away if somebody's angry, then this is really going to be a challenging situation for you. And so, what I want to say to you is the first thing to do is take a look at yourself. And don't wait to do that until you're in front of an angry student, all right? Because at that point, if you're having to rein in your own emotions and your own emotion is, I'd like to get out of here, then you're going to have a hard time working with that student. So, the very first thing to do is to take a look at what emotions are challenging for you. Why is that? How can you perhaps change your own mindset? And how can you learn a system for dealing with a student when they're having an angry outburst? So that is kind of trumps everything else. That's the first thing to do. There are lots of situations that you can be called into where a student gets upset. I'm just going to mention three right here. One is maybe they have a conflict with a peer. I would say this one is very common where they feel like something didn't work out, somebody didn't treat them the right way, something wasn't fair, somebody took advantage of them, they said something mean. So angry outbursts with peers. Another situation, which I think we run into often, is frustration over some sort of academic task. Either they made a bad grade, they were embarrassed about how they, handled some sort of assignment. They can't do the assignment. They are try to do the assignment and it's too hard. Any one of a number of things can be frustrating in terms of academic tasks. And then the final one, and this is kind of is related to the other two as well, but if there's a perceived injustice, so they feel like they were perhaps got in trouble and they shouldn't have. They Somebody treated them in a way that was not fair. It was not right. They're playing a game and somebody cheated, or maybe they think that the individual cheated and they didn't, all of these kind of things. So a perceived injustice or a reaction to discipline can be part of that as well. So in all these cases, I think as a counselor, we have a certain role to play. And the first part of that is to be that calm, reasonable, supportive voice within the situation. And that's why it's so important for us to be in charge of our own feelings so that we can provide that kind of role model. And then once we recognize that as our role, I think there are really three things that we can do as strategies in working with an angry student. The first one is I think we need to set and be aware of what the boundaries are going to be. So some of this has to do with, I think, common sense. Some of it may have to do with boundaries within your own school and what's allowed and what's not allowed. But in general, if you're dealing with somebody who's angry, then you want to set a firm boundary while recognizing the feeling. Okay. And that's the second strategy, is validating the feeling. So it might go something like this. I see that you're really angry and it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to, and then you can fill in the blank. It's not okay to throw things. It's not okay to hit somebody. It's not okay to run off from the situation, whatever the boundary is. And you have to be clear that it's not just that it's not okay to do that, that you're not going to allow that. So you might actually state that, but I can't allow you to hit somebody, or I can't allow you. And then if necessary, and this depends a lot on your personal ability to do this and the age and so forth of the child, you may have to remove the child from the situation. You may need to intervene in some way. You may need to get them to a safer place where there isn't anything to throw, that sort of thing. So you're setting a clear boundary in terms of what you're not going to allow. You're at the same time recognizing the feeling and recognizing that it's valid. It's okay to be angry. And the third thing that you want to do is then to empathize with the feeling. So I think it's not enough just to say, wow, I see you're angry, but you're not allowed to, hit somebody because you're angry with them. It's also helpful if you can in some way empathize with it. And you may have to get more information in order to do that. So you may have to, first of all, say, tell me a little bit about what happened. Otherwise, if you can or you're aware of what happened or is what is happening in the situation, you can empathize with it and say, a lot of times I get frustrated when I'm playing a game and things don't go well. Or a lot of times I try to do something like math and I get very frustrated as well. And then you're going to give them some sort of strategy that helps to calm down and to move beyond that. So you might say, a lot of times I get frustrated when things don't work out right. And here's what I do. I find that if I take a really deep breath, first of all, and just calm down, then I can take a look at the situation and maybe do something differently. Would that work for you? Um, Now, obviously, if somebody is screaming and throwing a fit on the floor, you're going to have to get more control before you can do that. All right. So, all of this, I think, depends on exactly what the situation is and how the child is behaving. But as a general strategy, I think the a good sequence is to first of all set a boundary. This is what is I can allow you to do. Validate the feeling. It's okay to feel angry. And then the third part is to empathize, and in doing that, become a role model for how to handle that feeling. Now, does all of this work like magic? Not so much. I think if you've been in these situations, you know that sometimes it takes a lot of time. Sometimes you have to validate the feeling over and over. Sometimes you have to restate the boundary. You may benefit from moving the student to another area. For instance, saying, a lot of times when I'm frustrated, it helps me if I walk. How about if we get outside of the classroom and we walk? You could just walk up and down the hall, or if it's decent outside, you could walk around the school or around the playground, or whatever's available to you. So I would sort of because you're going to have these situations, I would have some strategies in mind that would be helpful in calming down. And they need to be different ones, because just taking a deep breath doesn't work for everybody. Some people, kids have heard that a million times, and it's like, no, I'm already, I'm breathing. I don't need to take a deep breath. But if you can say, what, let's move around and see if we can get some of that frustrated feeling out and walk, or maybe even run. Maybe you get outside and they run back and forth. And then once they get some of the anger out, then you can begin to talk again about what happened, changing maybe some perceptions, some self-talk, all the kinds of things that as a counselor you're trained to do. So I hope you find that helpful in terms of working with an angry student, because I know that this is a situation that is going to come up probably more than once in your school year. And so I want you to plan ahead and be prepared. As always, thank you so much for all the work that you do with young students. And thanks, as always, for listening.